Let's talk about conspiracies really quick, because I mean, you run the Skeptics Society. You've done some great appearances on Rogan where you go head to head with people. I've never really been a conspiracy theorist, but I've had people like Ike on the show who that's his bread and butter. Tell me, from a bird's eye view, how do you see conspiracy theorists? Why is there an interest in them? And why did you create Skeptics Society?
Yeah, so conspiracy theories is certainly one of our targets that we address, in part because there are real conspiracies. So the question becomes, how do you evaluate the evidence? And of course, this applies to anything, the evidence for the Bermuda Triangle or Bigfoot or aliens or UFOs, whatever. This would apply. How any person should evaluate the evidence to determine if this claim should be considered reliable knowledge or not. So it's kind of an epistemological question. And so that's what we do. This is my life's work. What is true? Okay, the problem with conspiracy theories is not like, this guy claims he has a perpetual motion machine. I know he's wrong, because the second law of thermodynamics says there can be no perpetual motion machines. Or somebody says, I have psychic power. I know they don't, because there's no such thing as psychic power. There's no paranormal. There's no supernatural. There's just normal, natural, and stuff we can't explain yet. The problem with conspiracies is there are conspiracies. They're all over the place.
Like what?
Volkswagen conspiring to cheat the emissions standards in Europe. That's a conspiracy. Watergate's a conspiracy. Iran-Contra during Reagan, that's a conspiracy. All the WikiLeaks stuff that showed even under Obama, all the shenanigans that our government, was doing, monitoring Angela Merkel's phone calls. What? All the stuff with Kissinger and the Nixon administration manipulating elections in South American countries, because we favored the fascist dictator more than the communist dictator because that's better for American interests. It's like, wait, we were hacking elections? Yeah, we were doing that. So there's enough of this going on that when someone like a David Icke or an Alex Jones says, this thing was a false flag operation, that's not completely crazy. There are false flag operations. During the Kennedy administration, this came out in the 90s when a lot of these assassination documents were released, that some of his administration people, including McNamara, brought to him this Operation Northwoods. We're gonna commit these false flag operations over Cuba or over Florida, and make these airplanes look like they're Cuban or Russian, and that'll be our pretense to invading Cuba or assassinating Castro. It's like Kennedy went, what? We can't do that. That's crazy. But the fact that our government was even seriously considering that, including a whole list of things that they wanted to do. We're going to make this jet look like a Russian MiG and all this. So when people like Alex Jones or David Icke say these kinds of things, it's like, yeah, okay, Tuskegee, against these African Americans who were, had syphilis and they were not treated as a controlled experiment. Our government did that. Yeah, our government did that. So you have to evaluate each of them individually based on the evidence and a number of other criteria I use. So for example, most conspiracies are very narrowly focused. Like Volkswagen they wanted to cheat the emission standards. Why? Because they wanted to make more money. So insider trading, that's a kind of a conspiracy, and we know why they do it, to make more money. The focus is usually pretty narrow, but the moment you expand it out to like global domination, we want to control the world. Bill Gates wants to chip everybody on the planet to control population. It's like, okay, you've gone off the rails. That's not what conspiracies do. They're much more narrowly focused, because for several reasons. They can't do global domination type. Nobody can run the economy. And this is when I was researching conspiracy theories, this was the scariest thing of all to most people, is that contrary to a cigarette-smoking man behind the scenes running the world, nobody's in control. Nobody is in charge. Randomness and chaos and the sort of stochastic nature of the economy and society means that just shit happens and nobody can control it. The economy, the price of gas, you see, the moment gas goes up, they have all these economists on the news, tell us why it's going up. I don't know. If this guy doesn't know, who knows, right? So that's the thing with conspiracies. Well, and so in a way, it's what I call constructive conspiracism. That is a kind of a constructive paranoia. It pays to be a little paranoid about big government agencies, big corporations, because they have power and they can make things happen that may not be good for me. So there's a good reason to be careful and cautious and pay attention to those.
Said by the skeptic himself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's right. So, but again, there's what I, like the baloney detection kit. I have a conspiracy detection kit. The more people that have to be involved, the less likely the theory is true. The more elements that have to come together just perfectly, the less likely it is to be true. The grander the theory that it's supposed to be, less likely it is to be true. So just think about 9/11 truthism. Okay, the reason I'm skeptical of that is well, first of all, Al-Qaeda said they did it. They were proud that they did it. They said they were going to try to do it again. They did try to do it again many times. But just kind of the simple elements of, we know that the planes flew into the buildings, and so we know that happened. So the idea that you have that and controlled explosive devices were planted in the buildings at the exact floors where the planes hit, because that's where the collapse of the building started. You'd have to have an impossibly highly improbable coordination that we just know people can't do. They can't pull that off. You'd have to be in the World Trade Center buildings, breaking through drywall to put the explosive devices on the beams, and no one noticed this. And, we know that conspiracy theories leak. Can't keep their mouth shut. They want to go on your show or 60 Minutes or whatever to talk about what they saw. Not one person has done this. And then there's the absence of evidence where you would expect it. The WikiLeaks documents are very interesting to me because, the answer that 9/11 truthers or ufologists have is, well, of course I don't have direct evidence. The government's keeping that a secret. Well, now we have WikiLeaks with, millions of top secret classified documents leaked. There's nothing in there about Bush knew about 9/11 or his operatives planted the devices, nothing about Roswell and UFOs, aliens in Area 51, nothing. So to me, that absence of evidence is evidence of absence of a conspiracy.